So I hope you all had a wonderful unit test. So you had C1 options today, mathematics probably. I hope you were able to finish it on time. All right. So children, today we'll wind up with chapter 2, Indian Economic Development. Exercise, NCERT exercise. Last two classes we have been discussing, and now let's discuss the question answers. So let me share. The NCERT exercise. All right. So moving on. So let's see the first few questions, which are one markers. So we were winding up there with this topic. We have learned what is a plan, what are the the goals of 5-year plans, what is a perspective plan. We have seen this question. Then we have seen what is the central objective of planning in India. Now all these questions are very important for the exams. Further, we discussed when was the planning commission set up, how many 5-year plans are there. Now, which was the 12th 5-year plan, the last 5-year plan, after which Niti Niti replaced the 5-year plans, the planning commission. And then we also saw the questions on, why public sector was given an upper hand, the commanding heights of the economy. Then we discussed the green revolution, the phases, the disparities, the technology, the program, and then what are the merits and demerits of green revolution. For and against, we have discussed subsidies. Then we also saw Indian industrial policy resolution 1956, small scale industries, what are the provisions. Then we also discussed the import substitution policy. But finally, we can narrow down to the last topic, that is what are the drawbacks of the reforms that were introduced during 1950 to 1990. So we discussed that public sector for a very, very long time was not able to decide which are the areas the public sector should undertake and which are the areas the private sector should undertake. So public sector kept the control even for the minute areas for a very, very long time. For example, modern bread, it was there even till 1990, right? Communications, MTNL. After this, we have discussed that the license Raj, the excessive regulation of industries, that the industrialists were lobbying for the license for early start of the business. We also saw that the domestic producers were not bothered to improve the quality because there was a protection from foreign sector. Then we also discussed that there was a rise in prices for essential goods. So all these criticism, you must pen it down, you must do it from NCERT. All right, why did India opt for planning? Quickly raise your hands. Why did India opt for planning? Yes, children. What do you think why India should opt, why any country should opt for planning? Let's see. Yes, Meera. Why did India opt for planning? Meera Sehgal. Let me see how you respond for your internal assessment. Madhav, I know you people are exhausted because of unit test, but still. Simple questions. Why did India opt for planning? Yes, Manya. Hurry up. Think. Why did India opt for planning? So, as we decided, as we have discussed already, that India did not completely take over capitalist economy or socialist economy, but adopted mixed economic system so that both public and private sector coexist. Now, plan is, any country, why only India? Any country adopts plan because of, a good optimum utilization and allocation of resources to achieve the short-term and long-term objectives of equity, growth, modernization, self-reliance, right? Then eradication of poverty, reducing unemployment. Now, why should plans have goals? So plans should have, so we have planned the goals of modernization, equity, self-reliance, and growth, so that we contribute the sectoral contribution to GDP, so that our resources are optimally utilized, So plans should have goals so that the gaps between the haves and have-nots is narrowed down. What else? We adopt modern techniques, the broadening of the minds of the thinker, the way people think, right? Reducing the inequalities, the gender inequality, then increasing the productive capacity of the economy, the infrastructure of the economy. That is why plans should have goals to eradicate poverty. So try to mention all these points, and we have already discussed what are miracle seeds quickly. What are miracle seeds?
HYV seeds.
The HYV seeds. That's right. That's absolutely right. Then you may get a question. You may get a question on why should all right, children. So what is marketable surplus? We have done this in the last class. Quickly. Yes.
Portion of the agricultural produce that is to be sold in the market by the farmers.
Very good. Who's this, Peter? Who's this?
Maharishi.
All right, dear. All right. So well said. In the last class we saw that green revolution, because of this program, we were able to produce buffer stock. Because of good amount of buffer stock, the production, the prices of essential crops did, came down to a reasonable level. And the farmer was not able to, provide for his own family the food, but had a surplus to be sent to the markets. So good question. It can be a 1 marker, it can be a 3 marker also, children. Good response. Explain the need and type of land reforms, children. Here we have not only discussed the need, we have also discussed the types, that is, consolidation of land holdings, land ceiling, the cooperatization, that is cooperatives. So do talk about abolition of intermediaries, land to the tillers, then fixing the amount of land a person can own. So all this will come here. We have really discussed it in detail. Then what is green revolution, children? Very important question. Again, we have discussed this. Growth with equity also we have discussed. So let us see some more questions, which are there in NCERT. We have already answered in the previous sessions. So let's discuss. Does modernization as a planning objective create a contradiction? Yes, children. Who will answer? Is it a contradiction for the government policies? What are government policies? Eradicate or reduce unemployment. So does modernization contradict these? Yes.
Yes.
Yes. How? Because the labor will be replaced by the workers will be replaced by the machines, the technology. That's right. So modernization is a contradiction because, the workers are getting replaced with the help of technology. At a click of mouse, you can, at just one click, you can do the job of 50 workers, 100 workers, children. So where is the unemployment then? But it doesn't mean that we should not modernize, children. It also means that we should create more skill-oriented jobs. We should go for skill development, right? So we should, create machines. And it also means that broadening the minds, the way people think in terms of gender discrimination. So we should come above all these social evils. Why was it necessary for a developing country like India to follow self-reliance? So we have discussed it in detail. So here you will also talk about that if we are not self-reliant, we become vulnerable, our sovereignty become vulnerable to foreign interference because of foreign technology and foreign capital. So we have done question number 10. And why should service sector contribute maximum, children? As we have already discussed, that the agricultural sector is narrowing down, and service sector is expanding. The percentage population employed in the sector is expanding, and it is contributing now because it is in terms of education, rise in skill education, rise in skilled people, knowledge economy. We are uplifting ourselves to knowledge economy. So that is the reason that we are contributing more. And which are these areas? It can be communication, teaching, doctors, then services like, online trading, e-commerce, e-business. So everything is included here. And yes, of course, the contribution to GDP is rising. Why was public sector given a leading role, children of market? Very, very important, very important. So public sector was given the commanding heights of the economy, as we discussed in the previous class, that India was a backward economy. And at the time of independence, on the eve of independence, we'd had very handful of industrialists, very few industrialists who had the capital, the kind of capital required to set up an industry, and that too was a very, very less capital. And they were not, of course, they were not ready to go to backward areas to set up the industries because they were profit oriented. And to develop the backward regions and kind of capital required, so public sector was more suited, and therefore it was given the with the aim of socialistic pattern of society, it was given an upper hand. Then question number 12 we have discussed in details. Question 13 also we have discussed. Then children, questions like 14 and 15, why despite the green revolution we had a huge number of people employed in agriculture sector. So here you will talk about two very important things. One is disguised unemployment, and second is, although the industrial agriculture sector was shrinking, but industrial sector was not big enough to absorb. Industrial sector was not, capable to absorb the people who are migrating from rural areas. And when they migrate to urban areas, children, what happens? Since the industrial sector is not able to absorb, so the urban poverty rises. So you will talk here about skilled people, that although they were migrating, the lack of knowledge, illiteracy was rampant, so lack of knowledge was there, lack of skill was there. So now public sector was a huge drain of economy's resources. So children, now public sector, again you will talk about the point of backward regions, then you will talk about the point of less capital, the few industrialists, and of course they were incurring huge losses, but huge manpower planning was there. Huge manpower planning, huge manpower employment in public sector. But yes, of course, it was a drain of wealth. So because it was, we were not able to control the finance part, very effective financial planning was lacking, and financial autonomy was lacking. There was, interference of the government also in the day-to-day public sector management. So these points that we have discussed in detail in the previous classes, try to bring all of them. Then question 16 and 17 also we have discussed in good details. All right, quickly give me the answer, children. What is the answer for this question? Prime Minister, is it B or C option? Quickly.
C.
C option.
C option. GDP, which option, A or D?
Ma'am, A option.
A option, very good. Modernization?
B.
B. And self-sufficiency. So children, you can get questions like these, and this is just a one marker. Matching is only one marker, children. All right, children. So now we start with, children, the new chapter. So chapter 2 in detail we have discussed, and children, again I emphasize NCERT. Each and every line is important from the text, from the chapter, as well as each and every question from the exercise. Now we start a very, very interesting chapter, and our, new economic policy 1991, children. New economic policy 1991. Now, so I will share it again, but before that, so let me see if everybody is here. So you're winded up with your unit test. I can see some children are still there, scanning and uploading their papers. All right. So children, for the syllabus for economics UT, I think you have to, after 1 week, after accountancy. So you have from macroeconomics unit 1, all the chapters, children. Macroeconomics unit 1, national income accounting, national income and related aggregates. You have all the 4 chapters will be tested. That is the basic concepts of national income accounting. Then second chapter, that is circular flow of income. The third chapter, national income and related aggregates. And the fourth chapter, that is measures to measure national income. Methods to measure national income. All the 4 chapters for 20 marks in unit test. Then you come down to Indian economic development, chapter 1, Indian economy on the eve of independence. So we will be testing you what was a scenario of Indian economy, the parameters of Indian economy on the eve of independence, why the agriculture was stagnant. So we will also ask you about the industrial position on the eve of independence, why it was lopsided industrial growth. We can also test you on who are the people who measured national income during the British rule. Then we'll talk, William Digby, R.C. Desai, V.K.R.V. Rao, Finlay Shiraz, all this we'll test you. Then we'll ask you the structural composition of economy, the demographic indicator. We will ask you the foreign trade on the eve of independence. Were there any positive contributions? So each and every line from the chapter as well as the exercise. So I strongly recommend children go for but please make notes from NCERT. Because while you are making notes, you are writing, you are reading, and that makes you prepared for the exam. So children, moving on to chapter 3, liberalization, privatization and globalization. This is your unit 2, right? LPG it is called. Now first, the very first question, so before I show you the slides, the very first question, what was the need for economic reforms? And new economic policy that came up from the finance minister who announced, Dr. Manmohan Singh, right? So 1991, NEP, new economic policy. So the very first question is, what was the need for economic reforms? Why it was required? So the very first point that you will discuss, that Indian government had mismanaged its external debt. We were not able to repay money. We had huge import bills, which was draining our exchequer. This is our second point. So huge import bills in terms of petroleum products, in terms of essential goods that we were importing, in terms of machinery that we were importing. And this huge import bill exchequer was draining our exchequer, and it was the reason for our widening fiscal deficit. Widening fiscal deficit. So this is our second point. So the first need was that Indian government was not able to manage its external debt policy. And the second reason is the widening fiscal deficit. It's there in the slide, but you need to understand widening fiscal deficit was the reason because of the import bills, huge import bills that was draining our exchequer. The third point that you will talk about is that the government was using the taxpayer money for consumption purpose rather than investment purpose, more for consumption purpose. That means the revenue through tax receipts was falling short of expenditure. The government was spending on, eradicating poverty, unemployment, social reform measures. Then the social sectors like defense, public goods. But that was, there the receipts were falling short of expenditure, and therefore the government was using the borrowed money. And the borrowed money then once used for social consumption, it has no return because if it is not employed for the purpose of investment. So this is a very important third point that you will discuss, that the government was not able to channelize the borrowed money properly. That is, they were using it for the social consumption to cover up the deficit rather than the investment purposes. So not only that, they were borrowing to pay interest. So imagine they had to borrow money to pay interest for the loan, and not only that, they were borrowing only to spend on social consumption purposes. So that was a very, very serious matter, and that was the third reason why we needed economic reforms. Then you come down to the very fourth and fifth reason. Fourth also we've discussed. The fifth reason is, spiral rise in prices of essential goods. So there was artificial increase in prices of essential goods because of all these reasons. Then you will also talk about the Gulf crisis, the death of the then Prime Minister, the assassination of the then Prime Minister, Mr. Rajiv Gandhi. Then you had disintegration with the erstwhile USSR because we have international relations. So our country also was affected with the disintegration process. What else? What else, children? So you will talk about all these, the reasons as need for economic reforms. The need for economic reforms. Then you come down to the very next question. Now, what is the very next question? Yes. So after need for economic reforms, you come down to the question of the second question, and that is discuss the liberalization measures. So discuss the liberalization, but before that, a very important one question that is of 3 marker. That before economic policy, who did India approach for the loans, and what were the conditions laid down by the international bodies to give loan to India? So now the question is that India had to approach to International Bank for Reconstruction and Development. What is it now called? IBRD. IBRD, the old bank is? What is the old name? What is the old name?
World Bank.
World Bank. World Bank. So World Bank, that is International Bank for Reconstruction and Development, the new name, IBRD, and International Monetary Fund, IMF, as one of you said. So IMF and IBRD, India approached them, the international banks, for the purpose of, borrowing so that we can correct our economic crisis. Now these two international agencies, they told, we demanded about $7 billion loan. Now these told our country, the government, that only when you open up your economy, we will help you only when you open up the economy so that you will yourself improve your internal competitiveness and international competitiveness with efficiency. You should open up the economy so that you become competent. Otherwise, what is the guarantee that we give loan and you never return us? So therefore, India was, because of these conditions, India opened up the economy with the two things we understood now. We understood, it was high time that we understood that it is required to open up our economy. Why? To promote efficiency and international competitiveness. So we understood this and we did it then. And therefore, new economic policy 1991. So two things. One is $7 billion loan. And secondly, we realized that it is required for international competitiveness. What else? What else, children? What else could be the reason for the reforms? Yes, children. What else could be the reason? Think about it.
For removing for growth of firms.
All right, Madhav. So what Madhav is trying to say that, okay, let's, provide opportunities to our producers in terms of, technology, in terms of improving, improving the technology. Okay, that is fine. Now our prices of essential goods, that was rising, to control those prices. What else? What else? Then to control our fiscal deficit, reforms, increase the productive capacity, and infuse professional autonomy, managerial competency. So all this is can come if we bring in technology, open up the outsiders to our economy, in motivate FDI and FII. What is the difference between FDI and FII, children? What is the full form, first of all? What is
Ma'am,
FDI?
FDI is foreign direct investment, FII
That's
is foreign
right.
institutional investment.
Very good, Manan. Very good. So which one is portfolio? Which one is in assets? Buying assets in our economy.
Ma'am, assets is FDI and portfolio is FII.
Excellent. Excellent. So children, FDI means that the foreigners can come. They, so for example, Samsung, they can come. They have taken, Make in India. So many industries have come to the greater, this GYC, Yamuna City area, the greater Noida. So for example, Samsung and so many, Apple has come. So all these industries, they are establishing their firms, their industrial setup in India itself with the machinery, the plant and building and everything. Does that correct our employment also, children, the employment situation? Does that correct our employment situation, or they bring about the foreigners along with them to work here?
Ma'am, that does improve the employment situation, but
Which
not in the
kind of
case of FII.
Very good. Which kind of employees? So human resource management, the financial manager, you people, the chartered accountants, the lawyers, they are all employed. Every firm has a company secretary's officer, ICSI, the lawyer, the company secretary, the lawyer, then chartered accountant, then the human resource manager, the finance manager, the HR, the workers, all these are employed, children, all these. And it's not one firm, two firms that are coming. If you see under Make in India, it's thousands of firms that are coming to India. But the firms are, under pandemic time, when we realized, oh, China may be one of the reasons. So how the firms were directing their resources and closing down from China and shifting, moving to India. So this was possible because we have opened up our economy, children. Right. Now further, you will talk about this question on, liberalization measures. So after, now one very, very important question that is part of this is, what is the difference between structural reforms and stabilization reform? What is the difference between structural? Now, continuing with this answer, children, that we took $7 billion loan to open up our economy in two sense. One is structural reforms and second is stabilization reforms. So India took two measures. Now you have to discuss the difference that may be tested in your exam. So I will show you in that slide, it is there in the slide. But those of to all the students who are with the NCERT, please mark that. Now, stabilization measures refers to the measures by the government to stabilize the economy only in terms of the balance of payment crisis and inflation, children. The BOP crisis and inflation. The BOP crisis and inflation. So children, stabilization means you stabilize the economy in terms of price rise, control the prices, control the BOP deficit. That is the outflow and inflow to manage the, because outflow of foreign currency, what is important? Inflow of foreign currency is more important, right? So this is called stabilization. But structural reform measures are the long-term measures initiated by the government to correct the competitiveness, to remove the rigidities of the economy, children. Children, removing rigidities and increasing competitiveness takes time. That is why it is included in long-term measures. So long-term measure, which where the short-term policy measures will support and become complementary and supplementary to long-term measures, that is structural reform measures, that is remove the rigidities, remove the barriers and promote international competitiveness. How it can be done? Development of infrastructure. So all these years, we have really, especially with the government in the last 7 to 10 years, we have really come up with a very, very good infrastructure. If you see our the roadways and highways, the minister, the way we have spent money on highways, the roadways, connecting all the economies domestically as well as internationally. So that is infrastructure, which takes time. So our commitment was for $7 billion loan, opening up an economy. And since then, we have been doing two reforms, structural measures and the stabilization measures. You should know the difference. And it is only given in NCERT, children, not in any of the other books. And a question that is not given in any other reference book, only in NCERT, always comes in the board exam. So mind you, the answer is only available there. Then after this, we come down to a question called what were the different liberalization measures. So first I'll discuss, then I will show you the slides, children. Please take it because it is part of this ICT tool. So you have to take some screenshot, and children, NCERT, purely from NCERT. So liberalization measures, children, you have to discuss 6 measures. 1991 new economic policy. The very first one used these economic words, deregulation of industries, deregulation. So the government reduced the license requirements, and the government withdrew from the areas such as drugs and pharmaceuticals, the communications. So what the deregulation word means, that removal of public interference and the licensing from we narrowed down to 23 industries, then we narrowed down to 11, 9, 5, and now it is only 2 industries, railways and defense. And here also we have invited private sector. For example, if you see the defense, we have invited now the foreign investments in our defense sector. We have started with Rafale, F-16s. So children, here it is that now the public, there is deregulation. That is, now the public, the licensing is not required, and almost, we narrowed down the government withdrawal. Now it is only 2 sectors left, and that too, there also we've invited the investments, the private hand. So this is called deregulation. And the second very important thing that we did in these reforms is that now the license is not compulsory. You need not worry and lobby for the license. If you are a reputed producer, if it is for a very, very, feasible projects, the license is not required. So all the areas that we were discussing, pharmaceuticals, drugs, your communications, your alcohol, then you have arms and ammunitions were reserved for a long time. Then explosives were also reserved for a long time. So, but now you're moving on delicensing. That is, now the license is not required. If you want to spread out to more products, to more branches. If you want, you already had a reputed industry and you want to take up some new venture, new product. So now the license is not required. So that helps to curb the license raj, the corruption, the lobbying. So this was called delicense. Actually, the third reform measure was the products reserved for the small scale industries were de-reserved, children. Around 800 products that were reserved for small scale industries are now de-reserved. So enough of around 60 years that we provided the protection, now it is opening up. So for 55, 60 years, we had reserved the products for small scale industries. Right. Now, after this, the very, very important thing that the government did was that the price, the last point under, deregulation, that the prices now will be determined by the markets, by and large. Earlier, every time the government used to interfere to fix the prices. But now it will be the prices were left to the market forces of demand and supply. Market forces of demand and supply. Except that if it is related to foreign exchange rate, there will be managed floating which you did in money and banking, that the central bank will intervene as bulk buyer and bulk seller, and will only influence through market forces, not otherwise. So this was called managed floating as you have done. But yes, by and large, the government interference to fix the market prices were given away. So it was left now to market forces of demand and supply. Now, after deregulation, you come to a second reform, a financial sector reform. Children, after this, I'll share some material with you. That is, children, Regulator to facilitator. What do you mean by these two words? Regulator, facilitator. Which word refers to opening up? Which word refers to liberalizing? Is it regulator or facilitator?
Facilitator.
Facilitator, Arushi. So what did, first of all, one marker, what do you mean by financial sector? You will, the question is discuss the financial sector reforms as part of new economic policy 1991. So here you will first say, what is financial sector? So financial sector is, a sector that refers to the collection of banks, insurance companies, then financial institutions, stock exchange, foreign exchange market, foreign exchange market. So this all refers to foreign finance sector. So now the Central Bank of India, called RBI, it what does it does? It makes policies regarding supervision of banks, amalgamation, giving license, merger, takeovers, opening up new branches. All this was being done by central bank. So now what central bank has done, no need for obtaining license, no need for, approaching or taking permission to open up new branches for the reputed banks, or to take up the new products and services like insurance, So the banks are open to fix up now even their interest rates. For a very, very long time, the interest rates were determined by the central bank on saving accounts. Now the banks are free to determine their interest rates. So since the last 3 to 4 years, last 4 years, banks are free. So even this much we have liberalized. But initially, what were the financial sector reforms? The RBI used to determine cash reserve ratio and statutory liquidity ratio. So this you have done in money and banking. You should be able to define that CRR is a percentage of deposit that every commercial bank has to deposit with the central bank. And the central bank determines these interest rates. So central bank acts as a, commercial bank, it acts as a supervisor and a banker to all the commercial banks, the central bank. So it is a lender of last resort to commercial banks. So therefore now the procedures regarding licensing, taking permission, all that has gone. So now the RBI is more as a facilitator rather than the regulator. So it will only intervene when any commercial bank is doing any, is over crossing its limits, bringing any kind of fraud policies for the commercial, for the account holders or something like that. Then it intervenes, right? So that there's no scam or other things. So what is the thing now? It is a facilitator. Then children, earlier the foreign exchange sector was closed to the outsiders, but now the FIIs in terms of mutual funds, the pension fund, the venture capital, all this is now invited to our economy. So we have increased the foreign institutional investment from 50% to now it is 90% in our banking sector, industrial banking sector. Right. So now let's see some more. So this is all. Let's see what all we have done. Okay. Let's see what all we have done. Yes. So children, be ready for a small assessment also. So now we have discussed. Yes. So this is a very, very important question that we just discussed. Why reforms? Why new economic policy for $7 billion loans, structural reforms and stabilization measures? So need for reforms, government was not able to generate sufficient revenue from taxes. The expenditure was more than taxes. Let's quickly recap what all we have done. Then our PSUs were draining money from the exchequer. There were 6 PSU units. They were sick. They were referred to International Bank for Reconstruction and Development. I mean, the bank for financial revival, the revival for these PSUs. Then we had, government was spending more on social sector, which was a consumption sector. Then this is the IBRD, World Bank, and IMF. $7 billion can be as a part of MCQ. And then which is a new name, IBRD or World Bank, children? Which is the new name? Which is the new name? Yes.
World Bank.
So is it IBRD or the World Bank? International Bank for Reconstruction
IBRD.
Yes, yes. And IMF full form also we can give you as a part of MCQ. New Economic Policy, NEP, 1991 is the year. Please remember that we can give you 1990, 92, 91. You know, still some children did make mistakes in the last year we saw. Now, liberalization definition is very important. Removing the barriers, the trade barriers, children. What is liberalization? Removing the trade barriers, the rigidities of the economy so as to increase international competitiveness and efficacy. Right. So liberalization, you will talk about what were the, first of all, just mention all the reforms. So we had deregulation, financial sector, tax sector, foreign exchange market, and trade reforms. So this is what with a quick recap, deregulation. So do mention this economic word deregulation. So industrial licensing was abolished for almost all products except these ones, and now it is we are left with the the two sectors that are now still reserved for government sector, that is railways and defense. But there also we have invited the private capital. So de-reserved then the products for small SSIs. Then we came to financial sector reform. First, you have to define financial sector. First, define financial sector. So it includes all the banks, the investment banks, the stock exchange, foreign exchange market. Then you will say the RBI, the central bank, it decides the cash reserve ratio, the bank rate, the SLR, and then you will talk about how it is now a facilitator rather than the regulator. Very, very important sentence where you will say that now no need to apply to the central bank for the license to open up new branches of bank, new products and services being brought about by these banks. So not required that you take the permission. You are allowed in case you are a reputed and successful bank. FIIs are now allowed full investments in our the banking sector. Then we discuss the tax reforms, children. The tax reforms, it is popularly called fiscal policy. The tax policy and the public expenditure policy of the government is called fiscal policy. This is another MCQ. So what we have been doing now, children, this is the last reform for today. In the next class, we'll take up the trade reform and we'll take up the foreign exchange reform. We'll take up the privatization, disinvestment. Then we'll take about under tax reforms, we'll also talk about GST today. And then in the next class, we'll take about globalization, WTO, outsourcing. So children, tax reforms, now government realized one thing, that we should lower down the tax. Who will tell me why? Why should government lower down the taxes?
Ma'am, so as to increase the sort of liquidity in
Tax base.
the market.
Yes. The tax base. Why do you think that if we lower down the taxes, what you said will rise, that is liquidity or tax base of the government will rise? Why do you think that?
Because then more people will be able to pay tax. Also, demand will also increase.
Very good, Manan. Very good answer. Very prompt and quick answer. I really appreciate. So children, what Manan is saying absolutely correct. That is, government realized one thing, that why our tax receipts are very less, that we are not able to cover up our revenue expenditure. So what do you mean by children revenue expenditure? The consumption expenditure. That is, government pays salaries, government does defense expenditure, government is giving subsidies, government is maintaining roads, the filling up all those, the maintenance part, the maintenance part, not the creation, the new infrastructure. So children, do you think maintenance part, subsidies, giving salaries, all this is consumption expenditure or investment expenditure? Is it consumption expenditure or investment expenditure, children? Revenue expenditure, you do an accountancy also. Is it more of consumption expenditure, children? Yes or no? Yes, children. So revenue expenditure is more of consumption, because government is not multiplying by giving salaries. Government is not multiplying anything by just maintaining the roads instead of building new roads. So giving subsidies. So all this, if you do not cover up with your revenue receipts, that is tax receipts, and you're borrowing for these which is not multiplying. So therefore that is a little disappointing thing, and that is a reason for widening the fiscal deficit. So therefore, children, the government realized one thing: if we lower down a little bit of direct taxes, that is income tax and the corporate tax, there the tax evasion will come down, children. The tax evasion will come down, and people will voluntarily disclosure will be there. Voluntary disclosure of the income will be there. So children, this was a very, very important achievement. That is, the government not only lowered down the direct tax, the corporate tax, but it also simplified the tax procedures. People, never are used to understand how to fill tax, the SARL forms, the forms were so complicated. So that was a second reform, simplification of procedures.
Also, didn't they reduce the highest tax slab?
Yes, of course. That is one very important thing. The tax, very, very correct there. So the government did reduce these taxes because due to higher tax slabs, as you mentioned, there was tax evasion and people were not declaring their income to the truest extent. So that is why government did also bring a lot of voluntary disclosure schemes to, you announce your black money. We will not say anything, will not punish you. Otherwise, black money carries a lot of severe, penalties and procedures, which should be there also. So government has been bringing out after once in 10 years, once in 8 years, voluntary disclosure, you disclose. Otherwise, if you are caught later on, then you are gone. So out of this fear also, because government, when you bring out these schemes, then you cannot penalize the people if they are disclosing their income, black income. And just pay some 30%, 40% tax, and then you take your money. But if you're caught later on, you're not disclosing, then you wait and watch. That was the thing by government. So under this, lot of money was profusing in economy. It was disclosed. So many industries disclose their black money. So children, these are also the schemes that, under tax reforms, disclosure of voluntary disclosure reforms. Then comes GST, the biggest goods and services tax, biggest indirect taxes reforms in the history of our country. 70 years, one reform, the biggest reform in the last 70 years, goods and services tax, biggest reform, children. So we will take up 2017, it was implemented, 2016, it came, when it came, it took also one more year and then it was finally implemented. Come prepared with GST for the next session. Now children, so after this, what we do is a small internal assessment, children. Every time, because internal assessment this year is important, children, especially this year. Where am I? Let's see. Okay. So children, once again, why it's not going? Okay, how does it go? All right. So children, okay. Now what we do is, let me come to Teams. Okay. Now this is unshared. So come prepared, children, with privatization, with GST. And now this is something again I'm sharing, a small internal assessment. All right. Yes, here. Children, go to joinmyquiz.com and type this code. I give you 30 seconds to join. Only 10 simple questions on liberalization. 30 seconds to join, children. Only 30 seconds to join. Only 10 simple questions. Yes. Which will... This is the code. I've shared the code, children. 427650. Joinmyquiz.com. 427650. All right. Manan is there. Madhav. Good. All right. Aruneet, Zayan. Quickly join, children. So children, this is only on liberalization. Let's see who all were attentive. Simple questions, but we are having a good pool of your assessment, your e-portfolio. This is called your e-portfolio, and where we have all your assessment marks and which we'll be compiling to grade you out of 20 marks in your first term exams. Similar assessment we have for your second term and pre-board also. So be attentive every last 15 minutes and 10 minutes in every session. We will assess you children. For that very class, how much you participated and how much you were attentive. All right, children. Very good, Ayushi, Lavanya, Manan, Aruni, Vatsal, Sachin. Sachin, good job. Come on here. Vatsal, good job. Very good, Agril. Lavanya, great. Arnav, good job. Madhav, very, very good. Very good, Drishti. Vatsal, Ayushi, Manan. Good job, Manan. Lavanya, very good. Agril. Arushi, Aruni. Come on, Darsh, Sneha, Sia, Shivam, Divyansh, Samarth, Zion, Yashruti, come on, you can do even well. Nanya, Akshit, Jasmeet, Samarth, come on.
Ma'am, I've done the quiz.
Kabir, Urja, come on, Urja. Anya, Ani.
Ma'am, I have done the quiz.
All right, children. So we have Agrim, Ayushi, Vatsal, Ayushi Baba, and Agrim. Excellent, excellent job. Very good, very, very good. So if we see the leaderboard, let's see. So Vatsal, Agrim, Manan, Sachlin, Lavanya, Drishti, Madhav, excellent. All these students, very, very good. So some of the students you need to better pick up a little more. All right. Urja, Jazain, Tista, Dash, Sia, Nubhav, Arnav, Aruneet, Sameep, Sneha, Mitali, Sachlin, Manan. So top 20 students, good internal assessment today, and especially these top 10 students, Vatsal, Ayushi, Agrim, Manan, Sachlin, Lavanya, Drishti, Madhav, Arushi, and Arunit. Very, very, very good job. Quick review, and I'll keep these records are there, children, for all the students here present today for internal assessment. So some of you 20 out of 20, but some of you who have to pick up, children, please, those who are 12 out of 20, 10 out of 20 should cover up. Which one of the following is not a factor which led the government to introduce LPG? So, the players. So government's inability for the debt, we just discussed it, the very first question today, rising prices, of course, and this. Stagnation is not related to, new economic policy. Then we had, let's see the next question here. All right, this is the next. So the trade policy reforms aimed at all the above. So reduction of tariff, removal of licensing, dismantling quantitative restrictions. Merchant bankers, we just discussed in the financial sector today. All right. So the previous one, it was, what will you write for the previous one? Such as merchant bankers. So foreign institutional investor is the answer, children. Foreign institutional investors. One of the major reforms, regulator to facilitator. For the this lower form and uppercase, I will take it. I will consider. Now GST is expected to reduce tax evasion and generate additional revenue. Then involves deregulation, of course, liberalization. We did it today. Then which of the following is not a tax reform? Of course, devaluation is never a tax reform. It is a foreign exchange reform. So we did GST reduction tax. We did talk about that it is taxes and expenditure policy. So the fiscal policy we were discussing refers to disposal of equity. This is our very next class. Children, come prepared, but I'm very happy that you answered. Disinvestment was the answer. Privatization was also for the next class. I'm very happy you people have attempted it. Many of you have done correctly. Cheaper import goods was one of the reasons behind low level of industrial. Cheaper import goods, because the industrialists, they were not bothered to improve the quality, and cheaper imported goods also was a threat to our, this is part of globalization, threat to our domestic industries after opening up of the economy. So we discussed this in the next class. Then this was the last question. Children, very, very well done. Very, very well done. So your internal assessment is rising, children. We have got a lot of marks. Now, I think this is the third or fourth set of assessment, and your e-portfolio with me is, but there are students who are yet to, cover up the e-portfolio, children, for the assessment. Thank you so much, children. Come prepared, privatization and disinvestment. So I really appreciate your participation today. Thank you so much, children. Now you can exit the meet. Join in the next class and prepare for the UT next Monday. Again, you have a good UT accountancy followed by economics. So any doubts related to economics, so you can also post in the WhatsApp group. All right, children. Okay, children.